Welcome to the show today. Today's guest is MICHEL PERMEKE. MICHEL is a renowned author on Cuban cigars, in particular the Havana cigars, and has not only written books on the subject, has written articles, has been in close contact with Cuban government officials, has traveled to Cuba. In essence, he really has a passion for Cuban cigars, and in particular Havana cigars. MICHEL, welcome to the show today.
Thank you, John.
MICHEL, not many, or most people have certain ideas about Cuban cigars, maybe not very educated about them, but they certainly do stand out. I think most people think of them as really the best in the world. You're an expert on actually a particular type of Cuban cigars, and that's the Havana cigar. So can you tell us a little bit about what makes Havana cigars so great?
Well, to make a very good Havana cigar, and I compare very often the culture of the cigars with the ones to wine, you need soil, you need the right climate, and enough of sun. And then you get the good ingredients. Of course, the know-how is very important, and to make the finished product complete, you combine the two, the ingredients, nice quality, with the skills of man, and you get a wonderful product. Now, I always say right from the beginning, the best cigar in the world is the cigar that pleases you most. So obviously, for some people, that doesn't necessarily mean or have to be a Havana cigar. But if, let's say, about 80 or 85% of all cigar smokers recognize the Habano to be the very best noble product, quality product in the world, I think there must lay some fruit in it as well. The Havana cigar is very well known because it's very recognizable, earthy tastes and aromas. You can taste Cuba when you have a Havana cigar. It is very recognizable. And if you would put, let's say, 5 or 8 different cigars smoking on an ashtray, and even have the best connoisseurs in the world tasting blind tasting one after the other, he would probably not be able to say, that's the Dominican Republic, that's the Honduras, that's Nicaraguan, that's Massachusetts or Sumatra or whatever. But they would all be able to recognize the Cuban cigar because it is so recognizable.
That's interesting. You know, I've heard some critics say that indeed, pre-Castro days, that the Cuban cigar or the Havana cigars were absolutely the top in the world. But some commented that after that, the industry went a little bit down. But actually, I don't think, based on what you were saying about the soil, about the way it's wrapped or whatever, are you saying that it still retains the quality of the pre-Castro days?
It still retains the quality, but when you go pre-Castro, Cuba was probably one of the only countries in the world able to produce that quality of cigar for upper class people at the time. So it was already a very noble, maybe up-class product at the time. Now, after the takeover of Castro, a lot of Cubans fled Cuba and took some of this know-how, and even sometimes Cuban seed, because you see from time to time cigar boxes made in the Dominican Republic or in Honduras, where they specify on the box with Cuban seed. I mean, if that is already the thing, it must be a good quality product. The know-how is still in Cuba. Not all know-how fled in 1959. I can assure you that the generation working today in the cigar industry are just as perfectionist as in the software industry, as in the car industry, as in sports. They are fanatic about quality, and you can taste it.
Now, you have a real passion for the subject of Havana cigars. How did that passion develop, and when did it start?
I have a particular passion about it because it's a very nice story, the story of the Havana cigar, but it also associates me or my awareness with quality of time and with relaxation and enjoying life. It enables me not only physically to enjoy, but also psychologically. When I have a cigar, the world stands still for about half an hour, 3/4 of an hour, depending on which Havana I have. and you will discover that I'm not always talking about smoking a cigar, I'm more having or savoring a cigar.
And that's something you mention in your book, and we'll get into the book a little bit more detail, but you actually do make a distinction between really smoking a cigar and savoring a cigar. So can you elaborate a little bit on that?
It's very easy to describe the difference if you refer to cigarette smokers. Cigarette smokers do not know why they smoke. They are addicted and they smoke out of automatism. It's an automatic system. And I once recall the fact that I came into the office of my father and he was smoking a cigarette and he was having a very big argument on the telephone. And he laid down his cigarette, the voice went up, the discussion was really heated, and he took out a pack of cigarettes. I believe it was Marlboro at the time, and he lit the cigarette while the first cigarette was still burning. And I'm looking at him, it's still burning. And then, obviously, he puts the cigarette down on the ashtray, and I can see him thinking, oh, there's still one burning. And then, at the end of the conversation, he really hits down the phone, and the first thing he does is he takes out a pack of cigarettes and he lights a third cigar. I said, hey, what are you going to do? There are already two cigarettes burning. So the cigarette smoker, he smokes, he inhales, and it is obvious that today it has been proven that it's not good for your health. The cigar smoker, on the other hand, makes a ritual out of it. He looks in his humidor, already his eyes get really stimulated by, for this occasion, what will I smoke? Then he takes out what looks good, and he tastes and he feels the cigar. He smells with his nose. He listens that the leaf doesn't crack, that the cigar is really humid. And then we are going to light the cigar and really taste it. Let the smoke play in our mouth. Try to recognize the aromas, the tastes, and let the smoke flood away. And we enjoy and we have a cigar with all of our senses. Our throat and our lungs are no senses. So it gives a negative added value to the savoring of a cigar when you want to inhale, because first of all, the smoke is very hot and very strong. It would burn really.
Right.
And
let me just interject there, because I think it's a good moment to ask it. Actually, in your book, and let me introduce that book, it's actually, you've written two books, one in French and one in Dutch, for the French and Belgian and Dutch markets. Or for this book, Havanas Grand Cru de Cuba, and also in Dutch, the same book, but with a different title, Havanas Grand Cru out Cuba. So basically, Havanas Grand Cru out of Cuba. You actually do have a section in there where you have a medical doctor. First of all, you give your opinion about smoking and what, taking into consideration the health concerns or opinions, but also you do really show a doctor, and he talks about it. Can you talk about both your feeling as well as what the doctor says about it?
I felt from the beginning that if you would have a cigar the way I was having it, first of all, not 4, 5, 6 times a day, once a day, every 2 days, every 3 days, once a week from time to time, that if it made me so happy psychologically and physically, that it could not be bad for my health. So in the book, I dared the confrontation, and I invited a pulmonary specialist, Paul Ottmans, to really, on a medical base, analyze what are the dangers and what is the difference between smoking cigarettes and cigars. And he came to the for me, not striking conclusion that having a cigar in a proper way, not inhaling on a very maybe regular but not frequent way, was not worse for your health than many other pleasures in life. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, alcohol, wines. If you have 1 or 2 glasses of Chateau Latour in a week or even in a day, it wouldn't probably be very bad for your health. If you would finish down 3 bottles a day, obviously it would be bad.
And I think actually one of the concluding remarks of the doctor is that really, if taken into moderation, it is no more significant a risk than other pleasures such as alcohol drinking or whatever. That's basically what he was saying.
Or food.
Or food.
Whatever pleasures in life, even being a primary need of the human body, food and drinks as well. But if you overdo it or take the wrong quantities, yeah, obviously things can do more bad to your health.
And I would imagine that would distinguish, in most cases, a cigarette smoker with a cigar smoker, where a cigarette smoker is more likely to have 20 or 40 cigarettes a day, where maybe a cigar smoker may just
But
have it once a day or even once a week.
You can make the difference, John, with drinks as well. A Chateau Latour or a Chateau Petrus lover is not the same as an Irish pub drinker who drinks 2 gallons of Guinness a day. I mean,
Right.
there's obviously a difference. If you drink beer, or even an alcoholic who drinks vodka all day long, a real alcoholic, or one savoring a very nice glass of Latour at the end of the day, it's about the same thing. And I think that Jeremy Irons, the very famous actor, the English actor, said it nicely on the Festival del Habano, where he was not only nominated, but he won the trophy of Havana Man of the Year. And he went on stage and he said to the audience, smoking a cigarette is like having sex. Smoking a cigar is like making love.
Ah,
And
okay.
the full audience went, of course.
I think that's an image that will stick with a lot of our viewers, a good point. Michel, I wanted to also talk a little bit about not just the smoking of the cigars or which type of cigars, but also the fact that in your book, you actually have really paired up with famous chefs, Michelin 3-star chefs, who also have a very fine appreciation for Havana cigars, and also like to pair that with particular meals and also the drinks that go along with that. Can you maybe make a reference to that?
When I conceived the book in my mind, I thought we need, in Dutch, in Belgium and Holland, we need a book that in a romantic, understandable language writes about the culture of the cigar and especially the Havana. We don't need another dictionary that in very exact style and facts and figures gives you the information on particular cigars. No, I wanted it to be more understandable even for beginners. And then, of course, came the part where I said, I want to interest non-smokers as well. And I learned that those 3 chefs that are in the book are very big cigar lovers. The chef of Holland, Johnny Boer of the Librij, even his wife Therese is a very big cigar lover. So I immediately picked up the idea, why not have these chefs mention their favorite dish with their favorite cigar, so that non-smoking people, while reading through or going through the book, are being quizzically puzzled by those ideas of those chefs, and they would be interested in reading this book and appreciating the fact that I wanted to bring a full product to try to interest as large scale of readers possible.
Okay. I wanted to move now to a little bit about the Cuban people and the Cuban culture. Now, you've been traveling there back and forth. You've also been in close contact with the Cuban ambassador to Belgium and also the Belgian ambassador to Cuba.
Several.
Yes, and which has really given you the opportunity, I think, not only to see government officials there, but also go and see Cuba itself and also the people there. Can you comment a little bit?
Yes, the love for the Cuban cigar came because I only picked up my very first cigar when I was about 30. It was immediately love at first sight. I didn't feel the need to inhale. I only felt the need to try to taste the aromas, and by nose and by mouth. And I picked up literally more and more about it by reading about it, by in a certain way already collecting certain things, until at the age of 40, 10 years later, I had so many read about it and so many memorabilia collected, but I had never been in Cuba. Yeah, I was like a professor in the French who had never been to France before.
Right.
And then my friends offered me a first trip for my 40th birthday to Cuba. And also that was love at first sight, and mostly, not only because of the product, the Havana that brought me to Cuba, but the people, the atmosphere, the culture, and
How would you describe that atmosphere? That
I was thinking about that as you asked it. How can I describe the Cuban proudness under the circumstances that those people have to live, because the Western world obviously often thinks, oh, what horrible conditions those people are living in. But they are a happy nation, they are friendly, they are very social. Obviously they are very skilled. They just came home with 14, no less than 14 medals from the Olympics in London. I mean, for a nation of about just over 10 million people, that's quite a performance. They have great medical specialists. Mr. Chavez, the president of Venezuela, went for his treatment to Cuba because of the specialization of the doctors in the medicine. Those people, they have another social system than we have, but they are happy, they are proud, and they are very intelligent. They have good music. They have, not enough maybe sometimes, but they have good food. They have rum, they have cigars. They live on an island where the average temperature is 27 degrees, where there is no winter, they have no seasons. They just have a little bit of the wet season, June, July, August, and sometimes the hurricane season, October, November. But those people are so nice to meet. It was for me love at first sight. And I've traveled the world, John, and Cuba is the only country where everybody who has been there has a specific opinion about. It is either love, big love at first sight, or they hate it. But they have a real opinion.
You know, it's interesting, because it's interesting to hear a European's view of it, because I think, as you're well aware, in the United States, there are a lot of negative connotations when people think of Cuba. You have obviously a very large exile community in Florida.
Yeah.
Also, we have the embargo that has been since, I think, the early 60s or 1960. 62,
yeah.
And also travel embargo as well. And I think that's been obviously a controversial subject about whether to open up or whether to wait or put pressure on the current communist system.
The problem is, John, that the blockade, the embargo, is not the result of the choice of two people. It was on a political agenda. And obviously the Cuban people didn't ask for the embargo. And I'm sure, and especially cigar smoking America wasn't asking for the blockade as well. So in the meantime, things have loosened up a little bit. After a few decades, it became not only an embargo, but it became a personal vendetta between Mr. Castro and at the time United States president, because he has at least lived long enough as president to meet 10 U.S. presidents, I believe.
That's true. He's seen them all through.
He's seen all through. And at a certain stage, it becomes more like a vendetta between him and
yeah, I only pointed out because it is a difference of opinion, usually from the European side as well, and most people in the United States. I think a very interesting thing, obviously, to see how other people view it outside the United States. But in any case, I think lately there have been some openings allowing Cuban Americans to go back and...
Now, Americans have been to Cuba. I can only speak over the last 10, 12 years, but the Americans have been going to Cuba over Mexico, and the Cubans have accepted the currency,
absolutely,
the American tourist, and have given them their heart and their products and their national pride. But I think that Cuba is a very nice country, but still, I always reflect back to the Cuban cigar, and some people go for plain tourism, but the real Havana smoker who goes to Cuba, he goes really to heaven. He really goes to heaven. His visit is nice because of the people and the atmosphere, but you are like a little child in a toy store when you are in a Casa del Habano in Havana, downtown city, or when you are in the factory, when you can see how this noble product is being made 100% by hand. If you go into tobacco fields, when you look on how with so much love and perfection these people work those plants to give us the pleasure of having a real Havana cigar.
Well, let's open it up a little bit to not only people who are aware of the Cuban cigars, but what about the beginner who has either not smoking cigars or would like to, in any case, even if he has smoking cigars, try a Havana cigar? How would you recommend that that person educate themselves?
I would recommend trying a cigar, trying a Havana, if the person has already what we call epicuristic, I don't know if it is an English word.
Epicurean, yeah.
Epicurean qualities. If you like good food, if you like nice food, if your taste is really critical, and if you like to discover new tastes, if you like a good glass of wine, if you know the difference between a good and a bad glass of wine, and if you are into that thing, you are ready to try a cigar. If you really don't taste the difference between Chateaubriand and a Big Mac from McDonald's, then probably you shouldn't even bother trying a cigar if you're not a smoker.
Michel, can you run us through how a cigar in a Havana cigar is made?
Well, if we talk about the Havana cigars, they're handmade cigars of long fillers. It consists of 3 types of leaves. The filler, which is the inside of the cigar, is a mixture of 3 leaves of 1 plant. The criollo plant, the down leaves volado, the middle leaves a little bit smaller, seco, and the top leaves ligero. That's the inside. It's a mixture. Leaves are folded in a certain particular way, not rolled, are folded in a particular way to leave air channels for easy drawing. Those leaves are being wrapped by a binder, which is still from the criollo plant, the very, very, very bottom leaves, not so beautiful from texture because it's only a binder to keep the inside filling together. Then that cigar that already now is being conceived goes into a kind of press. For 45 to 60 minutes it is being pressed in a box to maintain and to get the perfect, exact wanted shape. And then the cigar is being finished with a wrapper. The wrapper is a very beautiful leaf, comes from a different plant, the corojo, same area, same province, Pinar del Rio. And the corojo plant is being cultivated and grown under tapados. And tapados are square kilometers of slightly silkish carpets, clothes,
right,
so that the plant does not come in or get into contact with direct sunlight. So that's why the outside leaf is very elastic, but has no, I don't know the English word, has no veins. Has no veins.
No veins, okay.
No veins. Virtually no veins in it because of the lack of direct contact with the sunlight. That makes the exterior of the cigar look good. The cigar is being made in 2 shapes, parejo or figurado. Parejo is a normal sized cigar we all know. It's a straight cigar with at the end a closed bit that we cut off before we light it. The other cigar is the figurado. It's either in torpedo shape or in pyramid shape, which means pyramid has 1 very sharp point, the torpedo shape has 2 very sharp points, and that is to commemorate, I should almost say, or to keep alive the shape that the Indians made their cigars of when Columbus in 1492 discovered Cuba on his way back from America. And I think that covers about the production consistence of the cigar.
So it really is a science. It's not just one factor of how it's rolled. It's what tobacco is used, where that tobacco is grown.
Well, it goes further than that. The cigar roller, on the moment that he rolls a cigar, when from the production area, from the storage, he gets his leaves and he gets the specifications of the cigar he has to make. Obviously, he knows if he's making a Corona or a Torpedo or a Pyramid, he knows what he's going to, but he doesn't know the mixture of the leaves. That's secret. He doesn't know for which brand he's going to make his cigar. So he just makes the cigar, the specifications that are given to him, explain, and he makes them in perfect shape, and then he hands over the cigar. There is a quality control. every cigar is being controlled. Every cigar is being controlled on drawing, on the draw, and on the quality. If the quality does not correspond to at least 100% to what it should be, the standards, the cigar is being rejected from the chain and goes out back into the tobacco, is being destroyed and used for short filler somewhere in local markets consumption. So the quality is very important. And then we have a very interesting part of the factory, the escogida, what they say, and that is where the cigars are being selected on color.
Okay.
There are about approximately 70 different color shapes.
Why is that important?
Because when you open a box, you want cigars to be all alike in the same color. Not a very dark. It's a natural product. It's a leaf. So there are dark leaves, there are white leaves, just like human beings. It's the same. You want, when you open the box, you want it to be equal. You want it to be inviting, and you want to already savor it by looking at it. And that's why they have 70 shades from light to dark. And the escogedor, the one who puts the cigars in order, 12 down floor, 13 top floor, which makes a box of 25, that order can never be changed, not when they control on quality, not when they put the cigar ring on. That has to be respected throughout the process, so that when you open the box, it is all the same color. And if there is a very slightly shade, it goes from dark to light.
So I think you've pointed out maybe the difference between a machine-produced cigar and really a hand-rolled cigar makes all the difference in the world as far as individual
it's
quality.
about 143 hand operations, which means a machine-made cigar takes about 2 or 3 hand operations, putting the tobacco in the machine and taking the handmade cigar out of the machine. And a handmade cigar has 145 from beginning, the first seed, to the finished product in the store has 145 interventions by man.
There we have it, the difference between a Havana cigar and other cigars. Let's just talk about some different types of Havanas. Now, I think most people probably, if they don't know much about Cuban cigars, they only think of, Cuban cigar is a heavy cigar. But actually, there are also mild Havanas, and that go through the full body.
Very true, John. There are in the Havana range, there are 2 main aromas under which we can define or catalog the cigars. There is first the very earthy, chocolate and leathery aromas, and secondly the woody, herbs and spices. And if you already know these 2 differences, you can develop either in one or the other taste the complexity of all the aromas. The cigar is being made with a mixture of 3 leaves on the inside, which they call the filler. It's a mixture of 3 leaves from the plant, the criollo.
All from the same region, though.
All from the Vuelta Abajo. They have to be, for being a Havana, they have to be from the western province, Pinar del Rio, the western province of the country, the Vuelta Abajo. And from that same plant, you have 3 layers. You have the ligero, it's the top leaf, the seco, it's the middle leaf, and the volado is the bottom leaf. The bottom leaves are the biggest. They are in the shade already from the top leaves. They are full grown, they are soft, and they are very nice. Higher up, you get some more tannins, you get some more strength, and the very top leaves, they are immediately to the sun, they are young, they are strong, and they make a mixture. And depending on how much of the top leaves they put into your cigar, the cigar wins on power, on volume, on strength, or the less they put from the top leaves, the milder the cigar gets. Secondly, you have to define which ring gauge. The thickness of your cigar is also very important, because if we take the same mixture in a thin cigar or the same mixture in a thick cigar, the thick cigar will give you the idea and the aroma and the perception that it is, or the awareness that it is milder, because it is like a chimney and you suck the air with the burning aromas. But in a thick cigar, you get much more air to the combination of the...
So is there a particular way that you smoke the cigar?
There is a particular way. The cigar has to be humid on minimum 65 to 70% humidity. That is because the leaves may not burn. If the cigar would be dry, it would be paper burning, the temperature would be too high, and you wouldn't taste the aromas. So, in a way, when it is humid at 65 to 70%, the leaf maintains its elasticity. And you have to work, you have to pull to keep it burning, because if you would, for example, for 1 minute, 1.5 minutes, not pull your cigar, not taste it, it would extinguish.
Right.
And then you have to relight it. Relighting something which has been burned gives a negative, although slightly, but gives a negative part to the aroma of the cigar.
Now, but you mentioned actually a little bit earlier about when you take out a cigar, you feel it. Actually, you're feeling to see whether it's really humid enough, the cigar. But when it's the case, when it's actually too dry, you can actually rehumidify it?
Yes, of course.
In a humidor.
The one thing you should do is when the cigar is obviously too dry, is not squeeze it too hard, not manipulate it, put it in your pocket or something, because you would damage, the leaves are so thin, you would damage the leaves, and then of course the cigar would be totally ruined and you couldn't smoke it anymore. So as soon as you discover that the cigar is too dry and not ready for consumption, you leave it for 1, 2 or 3 months in your humidor, and it will become perfectly again humid and ready for savoring, for consumption. So that's no problem.
Wow. Now, we spoke briefly about your book on the Havanas. But you actually started the passion by opening a store, actually the Mike's Havana house in Antwerp, Belgium.
I'm professionally in the car industry. I'm a car Ford dealer, and I started a Cuban cigar store together with a friend of mine, out of control. It's a passion that gone wild, and mainly because my supplier, where I bought my cigars in Antwerp, closed the doors and ceased all activities. And in a way of a joke, I said to my friend Mark Sabries, I said, Mark, I'll have to open my own store for my supplies. And he said, that's a funny idea. I like that idea. If you consider doing that, maybe if you have a good financial plan, maybe I would like to step into it as well. And in September 2000, I saw a beautiful store, beautiful shop on the Antwerp quayside next to the town hall. What a location, what a nice store. And I already saw inside how a cigar store could be fitted in. Oh, it was so nice. I called him up and said, Mark, you don't know where I'm calling you from. He said, that's right, I'm calling from my new store. Was it a joke that other day in June at dinner, or was it a true story? He said, if you have a good financial plan, I'll step into it, and then I'm going to buy it. And we bought it, and then in February, end of January 2001, we opened the store.
Okay, but still, even though it was a business venture, it really just remained a passion that you have, even to this day.
It was not a business venture. It was a passion. We opened it, and we had a financial plan that was in balance. We didn't win money on our back, but we didn't lose money. Which is better than most of the financial plans of countries.
But I just wanted to point out that even now, you no longer belong to or have a connection with that store, but you still continue to talk and write about the
due to professional other activities, I had to sell my shares of the store, the shop activities. And some 12 friends, of which my wife is still a part, one of the 12 shareholders, took over because they wanted, of course, this product, this shop, this oasis of peace, quiet, and alike people who enjoy the same things in life to exist. It was not, we couldn't let that product, that shop, die a very silent death. So the friends, they bought the shop. I couldn't continue for professional reasons, and now it still exists, and I'm still there, of course, and my wife is still shareholder, and I'm still very passionate about cigars, and I today still give lectures. One day we organized a clinic for beginners, a clinic for advanced connoisseurs.
Well, let me personalize it a little bit more, because I'd like to really talk about what are some of your favorite cigars. I guess it would depend on the occasion.
You're very well into the story already, John. It depends on the timing of the day and the occasion. Obviously, when you are very tired after a hard day's work and you haven't had a decent meal, but you are still in the need of that inspiring Havana cigar that brings you back into shape and to relax, you would smoke a different cigar than when you just finished a very big meal, a very important meal in a 3-star restaurant, and with a lot of people, totally relaxed. Obviously, you choose something else. You smoke something else. If you smoke in the morning, you smoke something else than when you smoke in the afternoon or in the late evening. It depends when you smoke.
Give us some examples.
When you smoke with a glass of wine, you smoke something different than when you're having a brandy or a rum.
Mm-hmm. So with a brandy, a good brandy, what would you...
Personally, I like the cigars with the earthy notes, where I can really smell and taste the Cuban soil. And in the earthy, leathery chocolate notes, brands like H. Upmann and Bolivar are two of my brands, which are very, to my opinion, very successful. Bolivar is a strong cigar, mm-hmm. It's a heavy cigar. H. Upmann is already a softer cigar. In the range of H. Upmann, my home base is Magnum 50. It's a ring 50, it's a thick cigar, it's not too long, it's about 45 to 50 minutes smoke. And it's a very good cigar because it's not too heavy and you can smoke it all day through. If after a nice dinner I would feel more comfortable with something heavier, mm-hmm. I would probably go for the Bolivar.
What are the price ranges of Havana cigars? I mean, where does it go from and what's the top?
Depending on the quality, I would say a very good Havana cigar starts off as from €8.
€8.
Then you have top quality.
Okay.
As from 8.
So it's about $10.
It goes up to maximum something like, I think, 30 or 31 euros for the most expensive cigar.
Okay, it's about $35.
Which is the limited edition of Cohiba, which is the Monte Cristo A, the largest 23.5 centimeter Grand Corona. Mm-hmm. There are cheaper cigars. There are handmade cigars, smaller and with not the very best quality, mm-hmm. but the second choice quality of tobacco. They go for 3.5, 4, 5 euros, and then you have the very cheap Cuban cigars. Some of them are even handmade, mm-hmm. And would go for between 1 and 1.5 euro.
I take it that those are not the ones that you're smoking. So, but it is possible to get a Havana cigar for that amount.
There is a Havana cigar for every wallet, okay. For every income. There is a Havana cigar. It is not a synonym anymore of an exclusive, very expensive product for old, rich people.
Right.
It is today.
So it's accessible really to
It is accessible, right. And it is more than that. It is today a lifestyle, mm-hmm. for lovers of quality time in life who appreciate certain cultures and certain aromas and certain tastes. And that is usually because having a cigar also usually goes combined with either a good conversation, mm-hmm. or a good dinner or a good glass of wine.
I wanted to come back to previous comments about the embargo in Cuba, and I was just wondering, does that add a little bit of a mystique to the product? Did it affect the price of Cuban cigars, the fact that it is not sold in the United States or allowed in the United States?
I don't think that it has increased the mystique, because the embargo was only with the United States. There are specialized importers all over the world, the Far East, even China today. Dubai is a very important market. South America, in Europe we have Spain, which is the largest consumer, but also the United Kingdom, England, and the Benelux, Belgium as well, very important market. So I don't think it has increased the mystique. And secondly, I can obviously not prove it, but I think that the means of today's transportation mean that all Americans who really appreciate a good Havana cigar had a way of getting them somehow. So I don't think if the embargo would cease that we would see a price raise immediately. I don't think so. I think that the Americans who only want to smoke Cuban cigars, even President Kennedy got hold of 1,200 petty Upmanns the day before he signed the embargo. So I mean, they are so inventive and so...
Interesting, I didn't know that fact. Okay.
He asked his press attaché, Mr. Pierre Salinger, to find him 1,000 but he also smoked Upman, by the way, Petit Upman, the smaller ones. And 6 o'clock in the morning, Mr. Salinger calls up the president and he says, Mr. Kennedy, Mr. President, I found you 1,200 Petit Upmans. And then the president said, okay, now I can sign the embargo because those 1,200 are from before the embargo.
Interesting.
I mean, if you are a little bit inventive, you find your ways. But what I meant to say, John, was that I don't think that if you would tomorrow seize the embargo, we would see an immediate price range because of higher consumption in the United States.
Right, okay.
Let's not forget that in the meantime, for 40 years, the United States has a number of consumers who have developed tastes for other cigars as well.
Right, that's true. Right.
You start if you don't have access to that product anymore, you start to adapt and to adopt your consumption, and also your taste adapts.
Right.
So I hope that it won't be any financial problems.
Very good. Michel Permeke, renowned author on Havana cigars and promoter of Havana cigars in general. Thanks for being a guest on the show today.
Thank you, John, and thank you for given me the opportunity to share my passion with your audience. And let me maybe close on the words that, to make myself understood, if somebody in my neighborhood would be disturbed by me having a cigar, I wouldn't be having it because I couldn't enjoy it. Thank you.
Good. I hope everyone else heeds that advice. Thank you, Michel.
Thank you.